Welcome back, and it's hello again from Lucy and Jane, and we're here to add some more stories for you in our Waltzing with Bears section that we usually have for the festival in the library. Now the next story is called Laura Bakes a Cake. There we go, and Lucy's here to show you some of the pictures. Not all of them, I think. So here we go. Mrs. Large and Lucy were shopping at Mr. Short's supermarket. "Oh, no, you don't," said Mrs. Large, as Lucy helped herself to a bar of chocolate. Mrs. Large took the chocolate from Lucy's trunk and put it back on the shelf. "The sooner we're out of here, the better," she said. Show this. There we go. Mr. Short was admiring the large pyramid of cans he had just built when Mrs. Large and Lucy came round the corner. By now Lucy was tired of sitting in the trolley, so she stood up and flung her arms around her mother's neck. So she flung her arms around her mother's neck. The trolley pushed away behind her and hurtled towards the cans. Crash! Cans flew in all directions. "Oh no!" gasped Mrs. Large. So there's the pyramid, the tower of cans, and that's the disaster that followed. Oh, how embarrassing. "If we're not careful, Mr. Short won't let us come into his shop any more," Mrs. Large told Lucy when they got home. While her mother was busy making a cup of tea, Lucy opened the bag of flour that they had just bought. Mrs. Large turned around and saw Lucy, covered in flour from trunk to toe. "Oh no, Lucy," she cried, "not the flour too." Lucy sneezed. "Achoo!" You've never done that, have you, Lucy?
No.
It's because you don't do much in the kitchen. Here we go. Laura was very excited when Mrs. Large arrived to pick the children up from school that afternoon. "We're going to make strawberry jam sponge cake tomorrow," she said, as they walked home. Lucy got hold of Mrs. Large's handbag when no one was looking and took out her mother's purse.
I never done that.
Look.
Never.
Never?
Never.
"I'm cooking a cake at school tomorrow," Laura told everyone that evening, "and I need to take some flour." "Don't talk to me about flour," Mrs. Large moaned. "But I've got to have some for school tomorrow," said Laura. "Why on earth didn't you tell me earlier?" cried Mrs. Large. Mrs. Large and Laura dashed out of the front door. They hadn't gone far when Mrs. Large opened her bag and saw that her purse was missing. They raced back to search for it. Mrs. Large looked in the bath while Laura peered inside the washing machine. Lester lifted up the cushions while Mr. Large looked in the fridge. Where else to look for your purse, Lucy? Finally, Luke found it under the pushchair. There, Lucy, look. So there you go. Look, he's found it. They've looked just about everywhere. Don't know where I'd look if I'd lost my purse. Not in the fridge, I don't think. But here we go. Mr. Short was closing his shop by the time they arrived. "Wait!" gasped Mrs. Large. "Too late," said Mr. Short. "But all we need is one bag of flour," pleaded Laura. "It's for my school cake." Mr. Short took no notice and carried on pulling down the shutters. "What are we going to do now?" cried Laura. And there's him pulling down the shutters. On the way home, Mrs. Large had an idea. They could ask their neighbour, Mrs. Smart, if Sebastian would share his flour with Laura. Sebastian agreed immediately. "No problem," he said cheerfully. "But we've only got enough flour for one cake," Mrs. Sharp said sharply. "In our house we always make a shopping list so we don't forget things." Laura looked miserable as they set off for school. The next day, Sebastian came out with his cake ingredients in his basket. While they were chatting, Lucy slid her trunk into the basket. She took out an egg and smashed it on the pavement. Then another. "Stop her!" screamed Mrs. Smart. But Lucy had already the third egg in her trunk, and she was aiming it at Mrs. Smart's car. Look.
But nobody knows why, do they, yet?
"Oh, really?" Mrs. Smart snorted. "My new blouse! And how can Sebastian make his best sponge in the class without any eggs?" "Don't worry," Laura said. "We've got loads." "Well then," announced Mrs. Smart, "you must share them with Sebastian." "Does that mean I can share my flour?" Sebastian asked. "I told you, Sebastian," his mother insisted. "There's only enough for one cake." "Then we'll make one cake together," said Sebastian happily. Look, there's the egg. She's having a bit of fun to herself, isn't she, Lucy? First the flour tins, then the flour, now the eggs. Whatever next? Here we go. Laura and Sebastian came out of school, carefully carrying a beautiful strawberry jam sponge cake. Look
Yummy, yummy, yummy.
"It looks fantastic," said Mrs. Large. "I can see which half is yours," Sebastian said. Sebastian, said Mrs. Smart proudly. "It's that one, isn't it? It looks so much lighter and fluffier." That evening, the Large family all enjoyed a slice of the strawberry jam sponge. "What do you think?" Laura asked anxiously. "We think it's the most delicious strawberry sponge cake we've ever tasted," her mother said. "In fact, Laura, you can bake all the cakes from now on." There's a picture of them all sitting at the table enjoying the cake. And that's the end of the story. I don't know what you think of that, but it was a bit unfair of their neighbour, wasn't it? Came out all right in the end, though. There we go. It just shows it's good to share, doesn't it, children? Anyway, we've found a nice elephant song, which I'm sure, well, I don't know if you'll know, but your parents will know. And if you can see, I've got my elephant t-shirt on, look. I'm very fond of this, very comfortable. Lucy hasn't got elephants on, but she's actually got a giraffe on the front of her t-shirt. You can't tell. It's a bit... To Bombay a travelling circus came. They had an intelligent elephant, and Nellie was her name. One dark night she slipped her iron chain, and off she ran to Hindustan, and was never seen again. Nellie the elephant packed her trunk and said goodbye to the circus. Off she went with a trumpety trump, 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 trump. Nellie the elephant packed her trunk, trundled off to the jungle. Off she rode with a trumpety trump, 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 trump. Night by night she danced to the circus band. When Nellie was needing the big parade, she looked so proud and grand. No more tricks for Nellie to perform. They taught her how to take a bow, and she took the crowd by storm. Oh, Nellie the Elephant packed her trunk and said goodbye to the circus. Off she went with a trumpety-trump, trump, trump, trump. Nellie the Elephant packed her trunk and trundled off to the jungle. Off she went with a trumpety-trump, trump, trump, trump. The head of the herd was calling far, far away. They met one night in the silver light on the road to Mandalay. So Nellie the Elephant packed her trunk and said goodbye to the circus. Off she went with a trumpety-trump, trump, trump, trump.